Welcome back to the Paige Kornblue Show. Today we're discussing a heavy topic, a tough one, but also one that needs to be discussed. A great reminder to discuss it and reach out and lean. It's parent loss and a way to support children and young adults who have lost a mom or a dad. The support channel here is called Empower. It's a nonprofit organization that exists because grief is universal, and healing should be too. Empower focuses on one of the most vulnerable groups, children who are navigating life after the loss of a parent or a loved one. Grief can be an isolating experience. If you've lost someone close to you, you know. I know I've lost my mom and I've lost my dad. But for these children, Empower supports. Grief doesn't always have to be so isolating. Empower has communities across America and is growing a chapter right here in my hometown in Boca Raton and throughout South Florida. And I have with me today my guests on this show, Empower founder Cara Belvin and CEO Jeff Kimball. Thank you.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having us.
We have, of course, so much to talk about. Of course, kind of the need, the why, how it all came to be, and a little bit about our personal stories as well, because those just naturally flow into the whole story of Empower. And I want to start with both of you and kind of your definition of Empower, how you explain it to everybody. Cara, if you want to start on that one.
I always say Empower is simply community. It's community for, kids who've lost a parent, and so that they can, meet other kids that they can relate to, that they may otherwise never really be introduced to or connected to, and a community where they can meet adults like me who survived the loss. And growing up, I just never had either of those things. I had an army of family and friends to support us, my dad, my brother, and I, growing up in Connecticut. But I never met another kid like me who lost a mom, and that was very isolating. And additionally, I never met an adult woman who lost her mom in childhood. And someone who could pull me aside and say, like, I know a little bit about what you're going through. And so it was 10 years ago that I had this idea to build this community and started around my dining room table in Boston. And thankfully here now in Boca Raton and in other cities across the country, growing and trying to bring our community to other communities.
Yeah, growing. How about you, Jeff?
You're going to hear this theme throughout. It's a similar, but Empower is a community of hope and healing where kids can earn resilience, gain confidence, and know that they can get through their grief. They'll learn that life is brutal for sure, but they're also going to learn that it's beautiful at the same time. And for me, it's a community that I wish I had when my wife passed away at age 38. My kids were 3 and 5. I know what it's like to have to tell my kids that your mother died and share those life-changing words. And then after that, for me, there was a void. And when I heard about the work that Cara's doing, I so very much wanted to connect. It's the most transformational nonprofit I've been aligned with in my 30-year career. And wish that my girls had the chance to participate in it, and just now want to pay it forward to the other children who might be feeling that they're lost or that they need some help or hope. And we want to let them know that we're here and that we've got a loving community for them.
And I think, especially the younger at that age, they don't even know what to say. They don't even know how they're feeling. But to have that immediate connection to a new support system goes such a long way.
It does. And, we always say we're not experts in grief, if you can even be that. Kids sometimes don't really know what to say. I still don't know the perfect thing to say. I mean, we get asked that a lot. Mother's Day is coming up or Father's Day is coming up. What piece of advice would you give? If it comes from a place of love, you can never say or do the wrong thing. But I always use the example growing up, I could hear the whispers behind my back. And so I'd prefer you talk to me about my mom, and I know why, out of love, I think a lot of people avoided the conversation for, kids like me and my brother. We were 9 and 13, and, people don't want to rock the boat, or they, think we're doing good, things look fine. So why bring it up? But I really would have loved, for genuinely people to kind of pull me aside and ask how I was doing. Not that I was giving a vibe that I wanted you to ask me about my mom, that's for sure. I definitely, put up or created rules around me that said, I don't want you to ask me about this. But looking back, I know that was a mistake,
Yeah.
So just a community where kids can talk about it if they want to, but they're not forced to, because it's very hard for kids to still talk about the, most deeply personal thing that's ever happened to them.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that when a parent dies, your identity changes. Mm-hmm. So as a kid, that moment on, you're now the child whose mother or father died. Mm-hmm. And what we need to let people understand is a lot of people go into that space because they're afraid to talk about death or loss, and they back away. And so here is this child navigating this new identity, and that's part of the loneliness they feel. And so, as Cara said, some of the most powerful things that people can do is just lean in. Your instinct is to lean out, but just lean in. Mm-hmm. And that can help mitigate that isolation. And that's really where we come in. We're like a warm hug for these kids. We're that sense of community. So if we do nothing else, we make sure that they're not alone.
Mm-hmm. That's what our mentors can do. That's exactly.
Yeah, I was going to say, elaborate a little bit. You said we're not, grief experts. Obviously, mm-hmm. we leave that to the mm-hmm. experts, yes. the therapists and whatnot, in that space. But what are we as Empower? What is, what's provided?
So today, if a child were to enroll today, a child or young adult up through age 24 who's lost their mother or father to death, they would enroll and be offered one of two programs or both. And as we say, take what you want and leave the rest, because it's not for everybody at every time. And grief really is lifelong. So we're just kind of open for business. We encourage the child to take advantage of our mentor program. And our mentors are men and women who've had the experience of parent loss. So it could be a 40-year-old woman who lost her father as an adult, who would make a great mentor to a little girl whose father died. It could be someone like me. I'm 47 years old. I lost my mother when I was 9 years old. And, I can relate on so many levels to a girl whose mom died. And so our mentors are 25 years old and older who have had this experience, and they are very carefully screened and vetted. I mean, in so many ways, I like to describe us as big brothers, big sisters of America. We really just emulated those policies and procedures. So our volunteers are heavily vetted and screened, trained, and then the match is monitored. And the family has a lot of autonomy in choosing the mentor with us, because it's you really have to let the family guide the process. Like, what are they looking for? Are they looking for a mentor who's young and maybe closer in age? Or are they looking for a mentor who's a little older, more life experience? Are they looking for a mentor who maybe had a similar type of loss, to suicide or to a terminal illness? And so all those things matter, and our program staff are really equipped to make really impactful matches based on what the child and what the surviving parent is looking for.
And then the other thing we do is we hold a series of fun events, get-togethers. And it really gives kids just a chance to have fun, right? Because one of the things that happens when a child's parent dies is sometimes their childhood gets stripped away from them. Kids tend to grow up very fast. They tend to try to take on adult responsibilities. And we feel it's important for kids to just form that, here's this word again, community, mm-hmm. and those bonds, connect to other kids like them. Just let it loose and have some fun. It doesn't have to be, a lot of people stay away from this space because they're afraid to talk about death. We're actually on the other side where we're trying to bring these kids back to their loving sense of self again. And a big part of that for kids is just to have fun.
And that's how this started. This was not a mentor program. That was not my intention. Around my dining room table, I was envisioning a sleepover on Mother's Day. That's all this was meant to be.
And why? Because Mother's Day for you, explain it, having lost your mother while young.
Mother's Day is so difficult. And I don't want to perpetuate any stereotypes because other holidays are difficult too for a child who's lost a parent. And you can't predict, and I would never tell someone else's story. But for me, Mother's Day was hard. And it was the 2 months leading up to the day that were harder than the day. So what I know now and how I, try to communicate this is those 2 months leading up to the day were very isolating. So I was acutely aware I was different from my friends. My friends were celebrating their mother. We had no tools or resources back then. So my father didn't know how to celebrate Mother's Day. None of us did. So my dad didn't always get it right, and I hold no ill will for that. How was he supposed to understand what to do on Mother's Day for my brother and I? But what I would have loved is an invitation 2 months prior, and that's what it was. It was a boxed invitation with this huge bow and this gorgeous invitation, and the girls were invited to a sleepover on Mother's Day, and it was downtown in Boston, and the events continue to be this way. I mean, our mission never changed. They're non-therapeutic. So when I was envisioning this event and all the events that we do today, I wanted them to be non-therapeutic. I was a psychologist. I started my career that way. But I really felt, while I'm a huge proponent of therapy, I wanted everyday people to be the volunteers and the chaperones at that event. And I wanted to keep it non-therapeutic. I didn't want to sit in a circle and talk about how my mom died and when my mom died. I wanted you to look around the room and realize you're not alone in this. And I can prove to you there are other girls going through this too on Mother's Day. And you will go back to school on Monday with your shoulders back. You will be 2 inches taller, because the secrets we keep are like, they destroy your confidence, truly. And so that's all this was meant to be 10 years ago. It was meant to be an event series where we'd get together for fun. We'd have a sleepover. We would do yoga and meditation, go to dinner. We'd then go to, cooking classes and jewelry making and actors workshop. It was all these things aimed at their interest, just simply to give them this reminder that there are other kids powering through their grief too, and then let them connect offline. I could be the one that sort of plays the game of connect the dots, but then let the kids do what they want with this community. Mm-hmm. I don't have all the answers, and my story is not like anyone else's. And never let anyone tell your story. I felt that all my life. People made assumptions about how I was doing, what I was doing, why I was not doing well or doing well. If I was hyper independent, it's because I was an overachiever. If it was, if I wasn't getting good grades, it was because my mother died. I mean, all of those things, they really can incite rage, as kids grow through that. And I thought there was a way to mitigate that. And the events were the first thing. And then naturally, a couple of years later, I said, okay, I'm going to start a mentor program. Yeah. And that was a massive undertaking. But I didn't reinvent the wheel. Like I said, I just sort of copied with permission, what other orgs have been doing for years. And I just modified it for kids in grief. And today we're the only ones doing it.
And yeah, this is why Cara is a visionary and a genius in the nonprofit world. And I don't say those words lightly.
Genius.
Yeah.
How does that sound, Cara?
That sounds awesome.
So there's a science.
Business card title.
And this is what makes Empower unique. And there's a science behind it. And the science behind this is that people learn best from somebody who is ahead of them on their journey.
There it is.
And so we're not therapeutic, but what happens with these kids is they see somebody else like them or see a mentor like them. And then that's where that confidence comes from. Mm-hmm. Oh, I can do this. Mm-hmm. And that's really super powerful. So there's a really true foundational vision to that Cara is too humble to say. The other thing is, like she mentioned, we're the only ones in the country doing that. And I don't mean that from a sense of arrogance. Mm-hmm. We're the only ones doing it because it's really hard. Yeah. So there are really a lot of good nonprofits that work in this space that, if you're gone through an experience like ours, you go to a center and you go at a certain time and you work in their program and then you leave. But the other thing that Cara saw, which is truly unique, is that we know that grief happens when it happens. It is not necessarily at a time when you go to a center. So she said, I want to take this program and I want to make it community-based, no bricks and mortar.
No.
I want to go when and where the kids need us. And so through the mentor program, what we find is that as kids are grieving, that's often when they'll reach out. So it's this really powerful combination of science and community and support that makes Empower really distinct. But from, now I'm going to put my business hat on. Now as a nonprofit entrepreneur now that scaled 4 nonprofits, this is the most impactful, but it's the hardest because it's just so different.
Yeah. And, we can talk for days on the strategy, and growing a nonprofit is not for the faint at heart at all. And growing a nonprofit in our space was a labor of love because not only did we need to fund it, and it's, you have to be comfortable talking about a tough topic, and why I'm so grateful you'd have us on. We can talk about hard things, as we say. But we were really going into a space that was underfunded, under-researched. I wasn't an expert in childhood bereavement. I didn't talk about my mother for 20 years, and that's a true story. And again, I think that was a mistake, but I don't hold any ill will to anyone around me. My community was incredible and saved me. My mother's family, my dad's family. My dad was incredible, told me he loved me every day. I don't think it was his job to teach me how to grieve, in a sense. I think he was 37 years old and just lost his best friend. And my dad would have benefited from something like this. And so there's kind of a funny story. There's a dad in Boston who I love telling the story because I didn't realize this was kind of like a byproduct of it. I was trying to help girls like his daughters. He has 3 young girls. And I wanted the girls, like the science says, I wanted the girls to see themselves in me. And that I survived. I was about the same age. My mother also died of breast cancer as their mom did. I had an amazing dad like their dad and a beautiful community. And you're really lucky for all of that. And a lot of kids who have that are really lucky. And that's out of the gratitude I have. This is me paying it forward because we unfortunately do know a lot of kids who've lost a parent and really have almost no resources to get them through really difficult times. And so there's the father, he said to me, thank you so much for this, what you're doing for the girls. I'm so grateful. And I'm just so glad they know you because, you survived it. And I'm so worried about them. And you went to college and you got married and you have kids and you have a nice car. And he kept saying it, and you have a really nice car. And I knew exactly what he meant. And this was years ago. And I thought, there's the community I could build for men and surviving parents. Now the surviving mother, is they need community too. My father didn't know any other 37-year-old whose wife died and whose kids were grieving. And watching your kids grieve, I would imagine, it's not my story, but I imagine that's an unbearable experience. So if you can build community for the adults, you can build community for the kids. Our mentors have become best friends. Our mentors are a community in and of itself, another byproduct that I didn't plan. Yep. But that's what the science says. The science says, yes, therapy is very impactful. And I'm a huge proponent of therapy, but therapy might be isolating. Therapy in a room with 4 walls with one person can be an isolating experience at times. Therapy saved my life. In my 20s, I found my way to it, and it was so impactful. But community is where people they build resilience and they can lean on someone else, and that feeling that they're not alone and is a confidence boost. I think my confidence was destroyed growing up, that I didn't know anyone like me, and I was trying to keep up with a world going on around me that was so normal, and nothing was really normal in my life after my mother died.
Cara uses this word often, and now it makes a lot of sense to me. Maybe the primal need, one of it, we all have, is to be understood, and we bear witness to whatever a child is going through without judgment. Yeah. And that feeling of being understood, especially when you're going through something like this, is very powerful.
I needed a witness. I could have benefited from a therapist too, but I needed a witness. And Oprah Winfrey said, she did a talk show for 25 years. And she said, even though some of the, guests were, some celebrities or lay people or salacious stories or whatever it was, she said, everyone simply wants to be seen and heard. And it's the same in grief. at any age. Everyone does want to be seen and heard. No one wants, you to tell their story. And this gives kids a voice, kids that previously were silently grieving, as experts say. And still across the country, kids are silently grieving. It is a real public health issue, I believe. And so people need a witness to their pain, and I didn't want to sit in my pain for hours on end, for days in a row. But I mean, I needed to admit it instead of pretending like it really wasn't happening to me.
Yeah, that's liberating.
Yeah.
I was going to say, having someone who can relate in such a strong way, because, when we do lose someone, the help right away is often there. It is,
sure.
People want to help. They don't always know what to say, but they're making meals and they're helping and they're supporting. And not to say that always fades over time, but it's the constant isn't always there. And having a mentor, having someone who's been through it, who is kind of there if you want, or today you don't, tomorrow you do, I can imagine, that support is invaluable.
Yeah. And it does fade. And that's okay. Like, there are very good people out there. You want to help, you're there, right? What a lot of people don't understand, Paige, is that grief is not linear and until you've been into it. And, I'm 20 years out now, and, I'm watching my children and they're becoming these beautiful young adults, but they're having a harder time right now than they did, 5-10 years ago. And it's because you come into these moments and all of a sudden you're reminded of the loss, or it just could be a regular day and you turn a corner and you see something or smell something. So I'd want people to understand and as you work with, to have some compassion or patience for people that are going through this, because you never know when that moment comes back. And it is not linear. It is a journey that will last the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. So that's what we let people know. So it's not a matter of letting it go. It's actually a matter of letting it in and learning how to live with it, and letting the other parts of your life blossom, and hold on to what is beautiful, so that you can not be, grief is like an anchor on hopes and dreams. And we want children to be untethered and allow them to live their life to the fullest potential again.
Yeah. For you, Jeff, you talked a little bit about that time when you lost your wife, and seeing some of the dads now, who, are in, the place where you were in that hardcore moment. Do you see the connection that Cara was talking about between, dad to dad, as their kids are getting help? It kind of waves back to the dads having a support network as well.
Absolutely. And one of the things that's funny is one of the common themes when I talk to the dads is how hard it is for a lot of us to talk about, So like the permission that Cara has given for people to talk about this is really important. And then there are things like, I feel like I'm making chicken nuggets every night. Is there something else we can do? Or, in my case, like, how do I stop turning all my children's clothes pink for years? So you get to the practical side of it, which allows you to laugh, because this whole thing in some ways is absurd. Yeah. But whether you're a man or a woman, when you go through that loss on the caregiver side, it is this sense of, how am I going to get through this? And your only concern is what is best for my children. Mm-hmm. And I remember so vividly going to a grief center in Connecticut, where I'm from, and bringing my children there about a month after my wife died. And then I met privately with the therapist after, and she said, quote, "You're in great shape. I don't need to see you all again." Mm-hmm. And I didn't know whether I wanted to vomit or scream. I mean, I thought, are you crazy? Like, maybe because I looked like I was holding it together, but I had no clue. And that's really, so if my children could have had the chance to meet another child like them, if my kids could have had the chance to go and have a day of fun, like, these are the things that help you, really not only just kind of get through a day, but get reconnected to yourself. And so from the caregiver standpoint, from the kid standpoint, this program is really powerful and transformational.
Well, I'd say the genius, to use Jeff's word, the genius in our mentors is this. And I say this very strongly. For me, in my family, again, a lot of girls, were shaking their head over the years as I was kind of envisioning and dreaming this organization up. A lot of people in the room were like shaking their head, like I knew I was onto something. That even though my mother died so long ago, it was, not much had changed. And so grief is universal, and we say all those things. But I wanted a mentor who was not in my family nucleus. And the reason why that was important is because I did have an army of family and friends. That's the truth. But they were grieving my mother. So my father was grieving his wife and just trying to put dinner on the table at 5:00. And he never missed a game. He was on every sideline. And my aunt was grieving her sister, her best friend. And now she had the job because my mother knew she was dying and asked. And she had the job to help raise us. My Nana was grieving her daughter. And so in that world, I'm even further isolated because I need to protect all of them. So as a 9-year-old, that feeling like, let me set myself on fire to keep you all warm. That's how I felt. Out of love, I needed to protect my dad. I didn't want to see him cry one more time. He didn't want to see me cry one more time. So the pictures come off the wall and we just moved on. And still today, Jeff, maybe that therapist wanted that for you. She wanted to say, you're great, you're doing great, and you're going to be fine, which you were doing great and you were going to be okay. But that there was no witness in that to say, this, I'm on my knees. Like I'm in so much pain and I'm mad and confused about this. And I just kind of want someone to like see me and hear me in this. And to have a mentor who is outside of that family nucleus is really important at Empower. And so this is someone who really can just be a phone call away. Maybe the mentor and the child, they're talking every day, all day for months, or they don't want to talk for 2 months because the child doesn't need the reminder or then is desperate for company and good company to talk about the thing that's hard. Mm-hmm. And we talk about things like Mother's Day. Again, I don't want to perpetuate any stereotypes because for some kids, maybe that's not the hard time. Maybe it is a death anniversary. Or it's back to school shopping. I started a back to school initiative years ago and encouraged our mentors to take their mentee back to school shopping because growing up in August, I was again acutely aware that I was so different and I missed her, so it's like the missing her and it's the, oh my God, no one can relate on any level to this.
Cara, I would have opened up my bank account and found a way to donate you $10 billion to not have to go skirt shopping with my children.
Now our schools make a box of school supplies. I'm like, sign me up. But my daughter doesn't want to do that, right? They like to pick out all those things.
Yes. It's important. And it's important. It was never about clothes and shoes and, hair and makeup. It was, it was about being kind of like losing this thing that your peers have access to.
Right.
And again, it was a painful reminder that she was missing it. As I got older, you start to see your loss from the perspective of your family and your friends and everybody else, because you're pretty centric when you're growing up in it. And it was all about me. And then I learned, oh my God, my brother was grieving, or how did my father do that? How did my aunt do that? Driving hours to come take me prom dress shopping. And she was sad doing that. She missed her sister in that. But she braved it and did it for me. And, I just think, that's like a heavy burden. And for kids, it's like a 10-pound, 10-ton brick on your chest, I would say, growing up. And again, to build a community is very simple. We make it pretty complicated, as Jeff said. I mean, it's not easy work. It's not easy work to run a startup nonprofit. Just anyone listening who is running a startup business, we have all the same challenges. It's not easy work. It's the most meaningful work, but it's the most intellectually challenging work I've ever done. I was not I thought I was uniquely positioned to do it, but no one prepares you. And that feeling that like I'm still a grieving 9-year-old girl, like I have to try to reconcile that. And I'll do it forever because I know that it is helpful for a kid to feel like they can see that there's a way forward through it when I just couldn't have been convinced of that growing up.
We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to jump into a little bit more building that community and finding a community if you don't have one in your city near you too, and a little bit about jumping into these events and what the kids tell you guys afterwards. So We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone, to the Paige Kornblue Show. We are talking parent loss through the nonprofit organization Empower. I have founder Cara Belvin and CEO Jeff Kimball with me in the studios in Boca Raton, one of the many communities where we are growing a chapter and really developing a community here in South Florida. Talk about the other cities that Empower currently resides.
Well, we're in several communities across the United States, really anchored in New England, the New York metropolitan area, tri-state area, the DMV, as it's famously known. And we've got a really strong foothold in Denver, Chicago, Los Angeles, seeding in San Francisco. We're really a national organization working in communities. But the truth is, we're on the internet, so people can find us, and we try to go in a very disciplined fashion because we're running a business, but we try to go wherever the need is, and the need is everywhere.
Can you be in a community that doesn't have kind of a home base? Is there a virtual support system at this point?
Not yet, but you know what? We're working on it. We're actually raising money right now to fund some new technology that would allow us to do that.
Great.
For anybody out there that's listening and happens to be interested in funding technology. But when it comes to going to a new place, we're all about community, right? So we don't impose this community from Boston or Connecticut or Florida if we're going to, say, Omaha, Nebraska. We really look to that community to say, we really want you here. And we try to build that community. So, for example, in Boca, we've been seeding this community now for a few years. And, that's the important piece of this, is that community has to be responsive and want it. And when that happens, then we've got the business acumen to be able to bring it.
Yeah.
One of the things that we talked about in the last half hour that impacted me the most was, Jeff, when you mentioned, a therapist saying, you guys are okay, to you and your daughters, a couple weeks after you lost your wife years ago. And, that happened to me with my kids. And it was through, we kind of had the trifecta, my mom, my dad loss, and divorce. And those are three big losses, right? And even if it's the most friendly divorce, it's still a loss. And so, and then like you said, you think of the kids, you think right away, how can I support and help and in all of this? And so you go and find all the support systems. And I love the consistency of this one because it is that constant and that lifelong friend. Just talking to another mentor, we were last night, and she said, we actually lately haven't even been talking about loss, and we haven't been talking about our mom. We did at the beginning, and I know we will again soon. But right now she's in her college years, and she's good. She doesn't want to go that way. And when she wants to, I'm ready.
That makes sense in the world of grief and loss to me, because a mentor, again, is not a grief expert, and they're not a social worker either. So we do encourage, kids to find their way and families to find their way to therapeutic supports for sure.
Right.
But a mentor doesn't have all the answers. They're just showing up. And that's truly what mentorship is an adult who shows they care. So someone who's a mentor, willing to hold space, as we say, terms I never knew growing up. We didn't have safe spaces, and, people didn't hold space for you. But it's what makes the most sense is that a mentor can be there and be like in her back pocket, because as Jeff just mentioned, his girls were 3 and 5, and perhaps this is one of the more difficult times of their life. They're entering early adulthood. Maybe they are thinking about their future. They're maybe approaching the age. We call them neon ages. Maybe it's the age their mother was when she died, or the accomplishments that have to be had before a death, an age of a death. So a mentor is not going to force someone to talk about their loss. And that, I really do want to stress that, because some parents will say to me, Cara, this happened a long time ago and we just really need to move on. And I think it's a mistake. I would never say that to someone directly because I see the pain in their eyes saying that. They're saying it out of love. But I would say, my loss was like a tattoo. It wasn't going anywhere. It fades, but it wasn't going anywhere. And I think everyone in my community, watching my brother and I grow up and supporting us growing up, I think they wanted us to be over it after 2 years. And again, that's out of love. There's nothing disparaging about that, but that is how I think across the country we think about it, of grief and in death is in divorce, or those are losses. And until we all kind of admit them and be really honest about what that is, sometimes kids should be able to say, like, I'm not okay. And that's what a mentor can do. And then we train the mentors to do that. We provide ongoing support all year long. So the mentor is calling us at the drop of a hat if there's a concern. If they are concerned because the child is not talking about it and they assume that's denial, or those, all the things that we think, oh, they're just pretending it didn't happen. Well, you don't know that unless you've asked that. Maybe they're feeling strong and good and they don't want to talk about the loss that day. Or maybe they're totally avoiding it, and we need to kind of help them see that it's a safe place to talk about it. But regardless, that's, how we built this mentor program. And that's why I think it can grow in any, community where there's a commitment. And the first commitment is talking about hard things.
It started with girls. Now it's girls and boys supporting both. So we've talked a little bit about Mother's Day. Father's Day is very similar, right? Yeah. That you have a day of activities and different things, but the support arm as well.
That's right. And, whether it's Mother's Day, Father's Day, mentorship, one of the things I'd want the people listening this to know is if you're motivated by this cause, we need volunteers. Mm-hmm. So, please reach out to us. You can find us at weareempower.org. And we talk about hard things. As Cara said, we're really honest and transparent here. But I want people to know that it is not as hard as they think, because we adults like to make things really hard and complicated. But when you're with a child, you're with the best of humanity, and children tend to just make things, more pure. Mm-hmm. So there might be somebody out there thinking like, oh, I'd really want to mentor, but like, oh, this is so hard and the time commitment is going to be so long. Well, it's not. It's actually not. We have options. We have a hybrid mentor program in which you only have to commit to, 4 or 5 visits over the course of a year. There are a number of options to get involved. So it actually doesn't have to be as hard as you think it might be. Mm-hmm. And where else do you get to volunteer for a nonprofit knowing that you're most likely going to change the trajectory of a child's life? Like I come from the world of nonprofits where people want metrics all the time, right? Like, can you give me the algorithm to show that well, we're volunteer driven. So we're about as lean as you can imagine. And we, you want a metric? Like, how about restoring a child's life, right? How's that for a metric? I'll take that any day. So we don't really have to prove, we can prove our impact, and I have metrics because that's what they require.
They're there. Yeah.
$1 invested in us returns $14.37 to the community. How about that for an investment?
That's a good one.
But the ultimate metric is the investment in restoring a child's life. And it's not as hard as you all think. So if you're on the edge right now about being a volunteer, reach out.
And I like volunteer because the mentors, of course, you like to have where there's loss in your life so you can relate, and there's that relatable factor. But the volunteers don't have to, right?
Yeah. Right. There's something for everyone.
Yeah.
We need volunteer. We have thousands and thousands of volunteers around the country, and it can be to help us find funding. It can be board service. It can be volunteering and planning an event that the kids come to, one of these, fun, casual, laid back events in your community. Securing partnerships with local businesses so that, keep our expenses low, and, yoga studio can invite us in and, bring the kids together for a day, or, cooking studio, you can do so many things, in the community. So there's something for everyone. And mentorship, it's a hard job. We won't, I'll be honest about that. It's hard for me to be in the same room still as a 9-year-old girl whose mother died, but it's the most meaningful thing I can do. And that is about gratitude. That is my way of saying, wow, I really was fortunate, and my mother was an incredible mother who gave me wings to fly, and it was short. I understand that, but I've had so much to be grateful for. And like you said, you watch the meal deliveries in the beginning and this outpouring of support that arguably might sort of dissipate after some time, and that's okay. But that taught me empathy as well. So my number one encouragement, if people aren't even ready to be a volunteer yet, kind of put us in the back of your mind. Maybe in a couple months, you'll come back to us and say, I heard you talk about this and I wasn't ready, but now I'm ready. But I would also say, if you do know a family locally, say something. And it's okay to talk about loss. It's okay to, say, how are you doing? Or how can I help? Or if it doesn't have to be the perfect message, but ignoring it, I thought was worse.
Yeah.
What do the kids say after some of these events? It's something that stuck out in your mind of, in terms of what,
it's countless. We've been fortunate to serve thousands of kids over the years. First, it was girls of mother loss. It was very specific. I was maniacally focused on building a model that then could scale to now boys, girls, non-binary youth of mother loss and father loss. But it's universal, and the feedback is always the same. So some of my favorite comments, we had one young girl, she said, at school, I'm just the girl whose mom died. And I felt that. 30 years ago. And it was still going on today. And what she was trying to say was, I'm going to go back to school tomorrow. Our events were always on a Sunday, interestingly enough. And she could go back to school on Monday with her shoulders back and this confidence that says, I'm not, all of us are going to go through really hard things. She's learning it at a very young age, right? It's sort of out of sequence. I always say to the girls, I promise you people will draw strength from you as you go about your life, and you will go about your life, and I can introduce you to a community, but you will be introduced to, people who do know adversity and who do know pain and suffering. And so, keep, drawing empathy and keep sort of, moving forward with love and less anger and resentment over your loss. But I'd say all of the responses are pretty universal. Every child says the same thing. I never, ever met another kid whose parent died until I came to this event, until I was matched with this mentor.
Your vision for South Florida specifically, talk a little bit about that and how people can help here.
Sure. Where we're right now might surprise people because of the vastness of our organization and the number of volunteers we have. We're very lean. We have 3 full-time staff and about 20 part-time staff. We're bursting at the seams. We're always going to be volunteer-driven, so we're always going to run lean. But right now we're trying to staff up, raise $5 million so that we can have 5 program positions and better serve the population that we have right now and those who need us. So specifically in South Florida, we're really trying to grow our mentor population. We need volunteers and mentors because that really drives, that's kind of the nexus, our North Star that drives the work. But we want to have a kids event person on staff to manage these fun events because right now there are so many of them, like they're so popular. The kids love them.
Right.
We need to hold more. And we need more program managers on staff because one of the things that we will never, ever compromise is the safety of the children. And we go through a very thorough vetting process and we monitor and vet intensely. So, we will not bring on people just to grow, right? Unless we have the staff that can manage it and vet it. So that's why we need to add more staff. But in terms of South Florida, as with all of our other communities, I know I speak for Cara when I say this, is we don't ever want to have to turn away a child who's been through a loss or put a child on a waiting list because we don't have the money to serve them. And the sad fact of our nonprofit right now is the one thing that's holding us back from serving more children is that we need more funding. And the challenge in this space in my career, I've gone from working in the U.S. Senate to Wall Street to running now 4 nonprofits. This is the hardest money I've ever raised because people don't want to engage in these difficult conversations about death. And we go in the places that people don't want to go, right? It's kind of like we're the first responders on the front lines of death and loss. And because we're there, other people don't have to go there. But that sometimes means, in a funding standpoint, a lot of the normal foundations that I might approach if I were serving children, it's different because we're serving children in death. And when that invitation comes across your desk, sometimes you're like, and what I want you all to know, if you're listening, is we throw the best parties.
And then there's that.
So if you come to one of our receptions, you will have the time of your life. You'll meet the coolest people because they all hang out
big
there.
Hearts. Yeah.
And you'll have a transformational time. So
That's right.
And we've raised millions of dollars over the last 10 years, but it was, it's entirely privately funded. And so that has been, from the community. And so we'll continue to do more fundraising. Every time you fundraise in South Florida, you're telling a story. And that, guest at a fundraiser, if it's a small event, they're going to go home and tell 10 people the story. And we continue to be word of mouth. But the stronger we get our foothold in South Florida and relationships with the schools and the pediatricians and other organizations, other nonprofit orgs that are serving youth, the stronger ambassadorship that we'll have.
Okay. So. Lastly, you mentioned the website. Can we mention it again and just how people can connect with Empower?
Sure. It's weareempower.org.
Okay.
Best
Easy.
way to connect to us.
Social media as well, right?
Social media. You can email info@weareempower.org.
Okay.
Or even me personally, Jeff@weareempower.org.
And I also want to make sure, too, all of our programs and activities are free of charge to the family. I want to be sure that was, and that's why we work so hard to fundraise, and we'll continue to work harder just to ensure that programs are, will remain free of charge in all the communities we serve.
Such a difference. Mm-hmm. You guys are amazing. The work you do is amazing. Thank you for spreading the good word today and your mission and your love and community every day.
Thank you. Thank you for your ambassadorship and for you speaking out about your own personal story and just supporting us.
Every day. I'm in. I'll put all those links on my website. That's paigekornblue.com. I always say Paige with an I and Kornblue with a K. It's all there for you in the news section and the podcast section. So thank you so much. We'll have you on again and much more to come.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Until next time, everybody. Cheers.